Business sentiment appears to have remained resilient. That's according to the latest SACCI Business Confidence Index. The September BCI came in at 110.9 points. That's an improvement of 5.7 points on the month prior. It's also improved markedly from where the BCI was in March 2020. That's just before COVID-19 hit our shores. Then the gauge stood at 103.9 index points. Despite that improvement, there are still many headwinds facing local business people. Well, to give us more detail on the latest BCI report, I'm joined by Richard Downing. He's the economist at SACCI. Thank you very much, Richard, for joining us. The business confidence gauge has made good progress over the past couple of years, of course. But just give us a picture of the positive elements that you think have led to this.
Well, there's three notable sort of developments that actually was positive for the local economy, and that was your merchandise and exports volumes, especially. That is an international trade that was very positive for South Africa to some extent, and we all know in terms of some commodity prices we did well. And then on the other hand, your inward overseas tourism was a very positive movement, and that actually both of these developments on the trade account as well as on the services account was positive for the South African economy and actually pulled the index up. But there's also some negative elements that, as you said, has resulted in the index that's really firing on all cylinders, and that is what we're seeing at the moment.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I wanted us to start on a positive note before getting into the negatives. We all know, of course, the current operating environment is a tough one, with issues like Eskom's blackouts and now, of course, the Transnet strike making life more difficult. Take us through some of the negative headwinds that you are seeing businesses experiencing that, basically the Business Confidence Index could be higher, but for these.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing at the moment is actually some aftermath of the COVID sort of problems that we experienced. You will remember that actually the banking system and so on were very lenient towards debtors, and actually the Reserve Bank lowered interest rates by quite a lot, percentage points actually, to accommodate households and a lot of workers actually in especially the public sector could stay at home, so they saved a lot of money in traveling to work and time and all that type of stuff. Unfortunately, in the private sector, a lot of people actually lost their jobs, which didn't happen in the public sector. And it's not only jobs; it's total income of some of these households were given up. And I think we're still seeing that problems coming through today. People in debt to some extent, and interest rates starting to move up, trying to curb this inflationary process that we're facing at the moment, which is unfortunately where the Transnet strike fits in, because it's now asking for higher sort of increases in salary and wages that is higher than inflation. It's exactly that process that one would like, to sort of not curb, but to sort of more manage it more within what the economy can afford. And I think that is the issues that we're still facing in the aftermath of that. And then of course, logistics, we know, the flow of goods and services wasn't that well. We know foreign tourism actually came to a standstill completely. And we know what happened to the tourist industry in South Africa.
Absolutely.
And then of course, some developments that wasn't that well thought through, in terms of also that actually did a lot of damage to the economy. And I think that this is what we're still feeling in terms of business confidence at this stage.
Sticking with the Transnet strike, because obviously it's happening right now, how do you think that's going to impact on business confidence in the coming months? Because obviously if it's prolonged, it's going to have an impact on people's ability to actually operate. Do you anticipate that the BCI is actually going to come down in the coming months based on this strike alone?
Well, the strike alone, if you just think about it, it's about logistics and the linkages in the economy, and even linkages internationally in terms of exports and imports. And I think that is where, at the moment, this type of activity in the economy foreign trade as such and tourism is actually to some extent positive to the economy, as I've mentioned, and to the Business Confidence Index. So if you now start to fiddling around with this sort of activity in terms of exports and imports, you are actually hampering not only the logistics, but actually the whole economy. And you're adding to the problems. We know about COVID, we know about the unrest in July 21, we know about the sort of devastating floods that we had in Natal, and now you always have this. So it always seems like people are looking for something to sort of damage the economy to some extent. And it's unfortunate that we have this type of situation. I think it's time people should realize we're not where we would like to be in terms of the economy. Businesses are struggling to a large extent also to make ends meet and to stay profitable and to keep shareholders happy to some extent. And workers also. I mean, if a company doesn't make it in terms of this strike, the transient strike, it'll cause more unemployment, which is already at levels of 35, one of the highest in the world. I mean, so these are things we have to think about when we set out on this type of action. And I think this is what is troubling to some extent, that we doesn't toe the line in terms of the signs that's up there that shows us we must be careful. I mean, the inflationary pressures that we're facing is immense to some extent. And we saw today actually the IMF coming out with new forecasts for economic growth, which is not good at this moment. We're seeing that growth was coming down from about 6% in 21 to about, I think they're talking about 2.5% around now for 24, 23. And this is not good. And especially that will also affect international trade. That is one of South Africa's positive things. We're a very open economy. We're dependent upon import and export activity. And I think that is what is so worrying about, people not thinking through the whole process and what it might cause in terms of, in the end, and even lose your job, not even talking about a salary increase.
Yeah, no, very scary situation indeed. Richard, thank you very much for your time. As always, Richard Downing, he's the economist there at SACCI.